Dressed under duress. I'd love to, Melanie replied. But do you have any nappies? She asked. I don't, but Peter does, Audrey proudly replied, causing her little brother to blush something rotten. Melanie's brother Paul dropped his jaw and stared at his friend as Audrey explained that he still wets the bed occasionally, and therefore has plenty of dream nights. With a photo of the boys kissing each other as leverage, they took little persuading. With their nappies on, they were given a nightie each, one with Tinkerbell on the front, the other with Barbie on it. They were not only put in the same bed, but in the same sleeping bag too, and when they woke, there was even more lovely photographs to blackmail the boys with. The girls had them over the proverbial barrel for years. Audrey had her brother Peter tidying her bedroom and polishing her school shoes whilst Melanie's little brother Paul was brushing his sister's hair and putting it in plaits every night, painting her toenails, running her baths and fetching her snacks. Then, on the rare occasion that the opportunity of a double sleepover arose, the girls would relish in humiliating their little brothers. It'd always start with a slideshow on one of their smartphones. Oh look, do you remember the night you both wore party dresses, they'd say, showing the boys a blush-inducing photograph. And here's one of you kissing, they'd giggle as the boys went crimson. Then they'd show the boys the picture of them wearing nappies, and sleeping in the same sleeping bag, one from the day that Audrey and Melanie dressed Peter up. Paul wasn't jealous in the least, but he did feel that it was unfair that they'd dressed Peter up when he was alone with them. The next time though, they redressed the balance by only making Paul wear a dress. Peter remained in his boy clothes on that particular occasion and he felt more uncomfortable than he would had they both been put in dresses. Their sisters would take a combination of photographs and short videos on their smartphones. Don't forget boys, you're only one click away from going public on YouTube or Facebook, they'd remind them. So you've got to be on your best girly behavior, we want to see smiles, not sulks. It's a tricky path to tread. If they pretend to enjoy it, the secret is safe. If they're sulky or stubborn or throw a strop, they risk exposure. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place and there's no getting out of it. Whenever Melanie insists on taking Paul to visit Audrey and Peter, there's a strong chance that their parents will be out and that means one thing, girl time, again. It wasn't always dresses. Sometimes they'd make the boys wear a pair of little girly shorts, sometimes with tights or leggings too. They were both put in Blackheart Justin Bieber t-shirts on one occasion, but worst of all was the day they were dressed in playsuits. Both had buttons up the back and the girls thought it would be funny to stitch them shut and make the boys wear them until they wet themselves. At least they both had a nappy on. The next time they were relieved to be put in dresses again, but that's not the same as being happy about it. They'd be forced to play with Barbie dolls, play Disney Princess Top Trumps, endure My Little Pony DVDs and make them apply lipstick and eyeshadow. They'd ask them questions such as what color knickers are you wearing? And when they gave a short timid reply, they'd encourage them to rephrase it, with more details. I'm wearing sky blue knickers with frilly white trim and a blue satin bow. Peter would humbly reply. Then they'd ask him why he's wearing sky blue knickers. To match my dress, he'd shyly state. Please don't, they'd plead, but their sisters didn't care. It was one humiliating task after another. Now hold hands boys, smile, show Paul what's in your handbag, oh, some lipstick. What a lovely color. Let Paul try it, no Peter, you apply it for him, are you going to snuggle up together tonight? No they hope. It's a rare yet all too familiar routine. Melanie, who's the most cutting and calculating of the two would say things like, you'll both have your nappies on so you won't be able to touch each other, and you do still wear nappies don't you Paul, whilst knowing full well that he does. She's made sure of that by suggesting that Audrey does the occasional wee into a jar to pour onto her brother's mattress, thus making their mother believe that he's still an occasional bedwetter and ensuring the boys always have a nappy to wear. Even as a young teenager, Paul always has a pack of Dre Nights tucked discreetly beneath his bed. Tonight is the 10th or possibly the 12th time in almost 4 years that the boys have been subjected to their sister's cruel games. They've been friends since primary school and do all sorts of things together, and both of them know that what they're about to do is something that neither would do willingly. More photos are shown to the boys. Some from the first time, some from the next, some from the one after that or the one after that, and some from the last time when they were dressed up in their sisters' school uniforms. They spent the evening sat at the table doing their homework whilst numerous photographs were taken of the two sissy schoolboys in their frilly white socks, little pleated skirts and white blouses. Then they had to sleep on Audrey's pull-out mattress in Audrey's old Barbie sleeping bag whilst Audrey and Mel shared her bed. That way the girls could ensure that the boys stayed together all night long. Nothing ever happened between the boys and their sisters, never made them touch each other, nothing more than holding hands, cuddling and occasionally kissing anyway. Peter had long since grown out of his bedwetting phase, so no big boys' nappies were available for them. Instead they wore frilly knickers and little nighties, each with a picture of a princess on the front. Audrey told the boys that tonight they'll be allowed to sleep in Peter's bed, adding that she'd already put her Barbie sleeping bag out for them to share. "You liked that last time, didn't you, boys?" No, they gulped and glanced at each other. "Oh, I think you did," she claimed, before asking if they're looking forward to sleeping together again tonight. "No," they spat. "Oh, I think you are," she coyly grinned. "Now, I trust you both did as you were told and shaved your legs." The boys gulp and glance at each other. "And you both went all the way up?" Again they gulp and exchange a glance. "Oh goody!" Melanie exclaimed. "Let's see, come on boys, pants off." "Everything off," Audrey stated. "I've got some lovely lingerie for you both, and this time, just for a change, I think it would be nice if you dressed each other." They pleaded with their sisters not to make them do it, but they insisted, and with 4 years of photographs to use against them, the boys really didn't have a choice. Melanie agreed before introducing the boys to their underwear. "I suppose neither of you have worn a suspender belt before?" The boys shook their heads. They've worn tights, frilly ankle socks, pelerine knee socks and even over-knee socks, but never proper stockings and suspenders. Audrey passed one to her brat. Paul fastened the suspender belt around Peter's waist before carefully pulling a sheer stocking up his leg and fastened it to the suspender straps. Once both stockings were on and attached, Paul held a pair of lacy panties into which Peter cautiously stepped, before having them pulled up to his hips. Slowly, the girls insisted. "You're supposed to be enjoying this, them up." Finally, Paul fastened a bra around Peter's chest before adjusting the shoulder straps whilst the girls co-ed, giggled and took the occasional picture. They told a blushing Peter that he looked beautiful, before suggesting that he maybe looked tarty. They jovially bickered for a few moments over whether he looked too tarty or not, before telling him that it's his turn to dress Paul. Having recently shaved every inch of hair from his legs, Paul's legs feel especially sensitive to the slightest touch. The girls giggled and took more photographs whilst Paul had his suspender belt fitted. They shot a video as Peter slowly pulled the sheer nylon stockings up Paul's hairless legs. Paul did all he could to not get aroused as Peter fiddled with the foot suspender clips, 2 of which are a little too close to his nether regions for comfort. "Slowly, Peter," Audrey instructed as he pulled a pair of lacy panties up Paul's stockinged legs. Finally, his bra is fitted and both boys are clad in saucy lingerie. Paul is in a deep burgundy set and Peter wears midnight blue. Both wear thin black stockings and reluctantly stand together whilst their photograph is taken. "Come on boys, hold hands." Melanie grinned. Peter's hand nervously slipped into Paul's and Paul quickly snatched his hand away. "Come on Paul, play nice," Melanie told her brother. "You're a girl now and girls are always touchy-feely with each other," she saucily stated. "It's not gay if you're dressed as girls," she coyly claimed before suggesting they kiss. "No Mel, not this time," Paul stated. "Oh, I think you will," his sister retorted. "You know what'll happen if you don't." "Yeah, and once it's out that we're supposedly gay you won't have this hold on us anymore." "What are you doing, Paul?" Peter gasped. "This can't get out, it just can't." It can only come out once. What would you prefer? He asked, looking down at his own attire then at his friends. They dress us up like this time after time? You love it, the girls claimed. We don't like having to hold hands and kiss each other. Paul claimed. We're not gay. Yeah, we know. Audrey retorted. But we've got photographs that suggest otherwise, she grinned. It's so romantic, she adopted a whimsical tone. She cooed and giggled. It doesn't matter what you say, we all know what really went on, we all know the truth. The camera doesn't lie, Paul. Melanie stated. Anyway, I'm not bothered if you hold hands or not, you can sleep in separate bedrooms for all I care, she shrugged. It's the 21st century, no one gives a shit if you're gay. Don't tell Em that, Mel. Audrey snapped. Why not? It's true. It's our leverage. No. Melanie bluntly replied. That's our leverage, she claimed as she looked toward the scantily clad boys. If they've got anything to be ashamed of, it's the fact that they're both transvestites, they're not even transsexuals, which is almost as acceptable as being gay these days, just a couple of trannies, sad little perverts who love dressing up as girls. We only do it 'cause you make us. Peter barked. And you only start properly complaining when we make you kiss and cuddle. Melanie retorted. Dressing you as girls has always been a doddle, she claimed. Now, how do you feel about the entire school knowing that you're just a couple of boys who love to dress up like girls? Peter and Paul gulped in unison. Melanie flicked through the archive of photographs on her smartphone and claimed that the pictures of them not kissing or cuddling or holding hands were far more powerful. This one, for example, she said, showing them a photograph taken 4 months previously when they were dressed up as schoolgirls. Anyone might think you always dress as schoolgirls when you do your homework. And this one, she added, showing them a much more recent photograph. It's so sweet seeing you helping Peter into his bra. I can handle the flack. Paul claimed. I'll tell the truth about the village hall windows and the years of blackmail, and the fact that it would be you two spreading the photos would prove it. Oh, you think so, do you? Audrey asked. The simplest explanation is always the correct one, and a couple of sissy boys playing dress-up is a lot more believable than a dastardly plot involving vandalism and blackmail. I don't care if people believe me or not. I do. Peter said. I don't want anyone knowing about this, he stated. Anyway, he turned to his sister. Haven't I got a dress or something? I feel naked like this. Not yet. Audrey quickly replied. We wouldn't have to personally hand out the photographs, you know. Melanie said as she flicked back and forth through the numerous pictures on her phone, taken over a 4-year period and hidden in a password-protected area. She also has backup copies hidden in cloud storage, and Audrey also has her own collection. Lots of trannies have blogs where they post pictures of themselves wearing all sorts of things. I could make one for you too, she suggested. And it needn't be my blog, it could just as easily be yours. Again, the boys gulped in unison. You've been thinking about this, haven't you? Audrey exclaimed. Melanie smiled proudly and nodded. All these years they've been blackmailing them with the kissing and cuddling photos when the cross-dressing pictures carry far more weight. Audrey turned to her brother and said, I reckon Mum'd be quite encouraging if it did come out. What do you mean? Peter asked in a whiny tone. No, she wouldn't, he claimed after being told that as a lefty liberal type, their mother would be more likely to buy him a dress than berate him for wearing dresses. Meanwhile, Paul is racking his brains trying to work out where he stands. He'd come to the decision that being accused of being gay was no big deal and any flack from their families or classmates would soon die down. Now he's imagining how incendiary Melanie's blog could be, and it doesn't look good. So, what are you going to do? He glumly asked. I dunno. Melanie shrugged. What are you going to do? I'm not going to do any more kissing and cuddling stuff. Me neither. Peter added. But please don't tell anyone. I'll get the shit kicked out of me if anyone knows, he claimed. What do you think, Audrey? Melanie asked. Audrey ummed and ahed for a moment. Yeah, I guess. I always preferred dressing them up as girls to watching them kiss and cuddle anyway, she said. Boys aren't very good at it, she added. Good. Does that mean I can actually wear something now? Peter asked. And does that mean you won't build a blog about us? Paul gulped. Audrey and Melanie looked at each other for a moment before turning to the boys and telling them that it was yes to both questions, providing they wear what they're told and pose for as many photographs as the girls feel necessary. The boys hung their heads and agreed. Melanie dipped into her handbag and removed a small makeup bag. Audrey trotted up the stairs. Tonight, boys, we're having a takeaway delivered and you two are going to be our waitresses, Melanie said as she tossed the makeup bag onto her brother's stockinged lap. She tells them to apply some lipstick and mascara just as Audrey returns with 2 black frocks and 2 frilly white aprons. Oh God. Paul grimaced at them. Oh dear God, he added when the frilly headbands and heeled sandals were revealed. Oh dear God, he thought as his sister hoped that the dresses would be short enough to leave their stocking tops exposed. They certainly look short enough. Anything is better than nothing though, and the boys soon donned tonight's outfits. They tottered about in their modest heels and little black frocks, laying the dining room table for 2, adding a candelabra and wine glasses and badly folded napkins. The girls peruse numerous takeaway menus and slowly decide whether to have Chinese, Italian, Thai or an Indian as the boys scuttled about in the background. The girls settle on an Indian with all the trimmings, rice, naan bread, poppadoms, and various conserves. They order for the boys too, but they eat in the lounge after serving their sisters in the dining room. Peter confesses to almost crapping himself earlier when Paul had the audacity to say no to their sisters. I almost crapped myself when I had to answer the door to the delivery guy. Paul replied. What did he say? Nothing. Paul replied. Just confirmed the name and gave me the bags and went, he said. He couldn't really describe the way the delivery guy's expression changed from "for" to "what the fuck?" as his eyes settled on Paul's very boyish head. We can't let them make us kiss each other anymore though, Paul stated. I know, but we can't let it get out either, Peter said. Look at us. Waitress. Audrey hollered from the dining room. More wine at table 3 please. The boys sighed. You gonna go or me? Paul asked. Well, it's my turn I guess. Peter sighed as he put his tray down and trotted through to the dining room. Yes, he asked. More wine please. Audrey grinned as she handed her brother an empty bottle. He took it to the kitchen and grabbed a full bottle from the fridge. Could you pour it please? She asked when he returned and placed the bottle on the table. And stand just a little further away so we can see your stocking tops. Peter filled their glasses and placed the open bottle between them. Then he noticed a smartphone propped up on the windowsill, directly facing him and the table. You're not filming this, are you? He groaned. Of course, his sister grinned as she picked up her glass, smiled at Melanie and took a sip. And I hope you're going to curtsy as nicely as Paul did before you go. You're kidding. Peter gulped. His sister shook her head and told him that it's all on camera. I would show you, but you're currently being videoed, so. Audrey glanced at the camera before turning back to her brother. Just a little one, she asked. Like they do in Downton. Peter swallowed his pride and performed a little curtsy before turning and returning to his meal. He scooped his dress and sat, telling Paul that they're filming them when they wait their table. No shit, Sherlock. Paul grumbled. They probably filmed us dressing each other. You reckon? Paul naively asked. Peter just gave him a look before shoveling another forkful of biryani and pilau rice into his mouth. What if it did come out? Paul eventually asked. We'd just have to tell the truth. Paul shrugged. No one gives a shit about the village hall windows anymore, and we were only 10, we were blackmailed into this and they'd be in more trouble than us. It's not my mum and dad that bothers me. Peter replied. It's everyone else, he said, before suggesting that the best-case scenario if it did come out would be to pretend to be trans, a transsexual, he explained. That's a terrible idea, they'd put us on beta blockers and give us female hormones and we'd grow tits an. Better than people thinking we're just trannies. Paul claimed. Peter disagreed and they left it at that. Not too long later, their sisters summoned their waitresses and asked them to clear their plates before serving dessert. Once their sisters had finished their posh meal and vacated the dining room, the boys began clearing up and washing the dishes. Oh Mel. Paul whined when he noticed his sister videoing them. Haven't you got enough footage? There's never enough, little bro. Anyway, we haven't got any domestic images to put on your blog. Melanie said, emphasizing your. You said you wasn't going to do that. Well, I suppose it's only fair to rephrase myself and say that I've not put it live, yet. You bitch. Now, calm down, she smugly retorted before assuring him that it won't go live, so long as they continue to pay along. Paul snarled and questioned exactly what her assurance is actually worth. Well, I've kept my word for the last 4 years, so far as I'm aware, only 4 people know about this. Melanie informed him. If you don't trust me, then try me, she smugly suggested. Now was as good a time as any for Paul to wind his neck in. Melanie returned to the lounge and the boys finished cleaning the kitchen and dining room. The girls were sat on the sofa watching The Princess Diaries. The boys would have rather done anything but sit through such a lame movie, but their sisters insisted they stay and watch, if only to take turns topping up their glasses when required. The film ended and the boys groaned when one of them was instructed to put the DVD of the sequel in the player. Do we have to watch this one too? Peter whined. Yes. Melanie replied. You'll like this one. It's got a couple of maids in it. Audrey fell asleep on Melanie halfway through the second movie. The boys yawned but not through tiredness, only boredom. Melanie eventually let them go before asking Peter what time his parents were due back. Tea time, I think, he replied, before asking if he and Paul had to share the bed or not. Only if you want to, she replied. The boys sneered at her as they made their exit. Melanie appended the second bottle of wine into her glass, before trying to wake Audrey. Since Peter could have his bed to himself on this occasion, Paul was directed to the spare bedroom with the bunk beds. He undressed and climbed onto the top bunk. The fact they weren't blackmailed into kissing and cuddling was a small victory, he thought, but they're still over the same barrel they've been over for the last 4 years. One day it'll all come out and it won't be pretty, he figured. Paul lay awake in his bed and worried about the consequences too. He could just see the blog that Melanie threatened them with. Here's a picture of us doing our homework dressed in our girls' school uniforms. Here's a video of us doing our chores whilst dressed as maids. Here's a picture of us aged 10 or 11 wearing party dresses. It would be explosive stuff at school, even without the pictures of them kissing and cuddling. Meanwhile, Melanie has managed to wake Audrey and they're sharing the final glass of wine. So, what time are your parents due back? Melanie asked. Afternoon, I think. Audrey replied. It wasn't too long before Peter overheard them climbing the stairs. His sister has clearly had a little more wine than she should have, he thinks as he hears a stumble, a thump and a giggle. It wasn't too long before Peter's eyelids got too heavy and he drifted off to sleep. He woke the next morning after a quick dreamless night. The sound of footsteps on the stairs had drawn him out of his slumber, and presuming they were his sisters or Melanie's or Paul's, he thought little of them. That is until he heard his mother's voice yelp, "What the hell is going on here? What the hell are they doing back so early?" Peter thought as he leapt out of his bed, donned his bathrobe and quickly burst out of his bedroom. Peter gasped and cupped his mouth. His father told him to go to his room, but Peter went to the spare room instead. What's going on? Paul asked. Peter shut the door behind him. My mum's just caught Audrey and Mel in their bed, he loudly whispered. I think they're lesbians, he said as the commotion echoed through the walls. And by the sound of it, Audrey's in big trouble, he grinned. Oh no. Paul grimaced. That means it's all going to come out now. Which means she'll be in even more trouble. Peter claimed. So maybe not. All of a sudden, the door burst open. There you are. Peter's mother exclaimed. What's going on with this? She asked. In one hand is the black dress he'd worn last night, in the other, the lingerie. She must have found them in his bedroom since he didn't exactly hide them after getting undressed last night, he just hung them neatly. Peter croaked. It took his mother a matter of seconds to notice similar items of clothing hanging in the spare room. What have you two been up to? She asked. Peter croaked. Mel and Audrey made us wear them. Paul confessed. They always do, he said. Ever since we smashed the windows at the village hall. What windows? When? She quizzed before summoning them downstairs. She stormed out. I thought they wouldn't be back till tea time. Paul quizzed. So did I. Peter grimaced. We better get dressed and face the music. Yeah. Paul replied. He looked at the maid's uniform before wondering where his clothes were. Can you fetch my clothes up? He asked. It was a nerve-wracking wait for Paul. He's naked beneath the duvet, and in the event that Peter can't find his clothes, he looked at the maid's uniform again. Oh, thank God for that! Paul exclaimed when Peter returned with his own clothing. Peter and Audrey were put in the kitchen under the watchful eye of their father. Paul and Melanie were in the sitting room with Peter and Audrey's mother, who'd wasted no time in calling their parents and asking one or both of them to come over ASAP. Paul was very forthcoming with the truth. He told them about the village hall windows, the subsequent blackmail, and being forced to dress as girls, time after time whenever the opportunity arose. He didn't mention certain little details, such as being forced to kiss each other and share a single sleeping bag, and he denied any knowledge of Audrey and Melanie's relationship. The first he'd knew of it was the previous night when he'd heard them at it for ages before he finally got to sleep. Meanwhile, Paul was timidly telling his father the truth too. He told him about being forced to wear dresses and having to pose for photographs, how Audrey would wee into a jar and pour it on his mattress, making it look like he'd wet the bed. Why on earth would she do that? His father asked. Paul reluctantly explained, and his father was livid. All the money we've spent on dree nights and all the worry your mother's been through thinking you're still wetting the bed at your age. Peter's prediction was right. Both Mel and Audrey were in big trouble. Not for their lesbian affair or for drinking alcohol, they are both 16 and therefore above the age of consent. The grown-ups decide that boys have suffered enough for their childish recklessness. Peter and Paul felt well and truly off the hook, but there's still a deep sense of shame surrounding the revelations. There's also God knows how many photographs of them dressed as little girls, schoolgirls, French maids, and more. They've both been assured that all the photographs have been deleted, but neither truly believes either of their sisters. One day, maybe next month or even in a year or two, the photos could come out in one final act of spite. All they can do is hope that that never happens.